guys, it's Stacy from Cool Mom Eats. I am trying to go live on YouTube. Also, I think we've got it. Hi guys on YouTube. I'm just gonna adjust here a little bit. Hi. All right, I can't believe this is actually working. Hello, I am Stacy, One Hungry Mama, and also managing food editor at Cool Mom Picks on the site Cool Mom Eats. I am also the author of a family cookbook called Make It Easy. Oh my gosh, my lights are so bright today. Can you even see that? There you go. More on the cookbook and why I'm plugging it. It's not just to plug it. I actually have good reason for that today. We're going to be cooking, which I'm so excited about. But before I get to that, there are two reasons why I'm super excited about today's live broadcast. The first thing is that I'm live broadcasting on my One Hungry Mama channel on YouTube, which I haven't been at in forever. You guys, if you've been to this channel before, part of why I've been on hiatus is because I've been working with the Cool Mom Picks team launching CoolMomEats.com. And you guys on Facebook are probably watching on the Cool Mom Picks page, so you're aware of the site. But did you know that we have a food site? We do. It's for parents, if you have picky eaters, if you're looking for family-friendly recipes, if you're looking for kitchen solutions, even if you hate cooking, that's where you find all of our content, here and on CoolMomEats.com. So I'm very excited for you two to meet. YouTubers, Cool Mom Eats, that's where you have to go to follow up besides these videos. And Cool Mom Eats fans and Facebookers, if you want more cooking videos with family-friendly recipes that are fresh, that are easy, kid-friendly, you can check me out on One Hungry Mama YouTube channel. Okay, now that that's out of the way, there is another reason why I'm super excited about today's broadcast. Wow, today's light is really bright, right? I'm washed out. Woo! I am excited because, hi Caroline. I am wanting to make this a series, okay? Back pocket recipes. So here's the thing about back pocket. I kind of live a back pocket life where I like to have just go-to things, like go-to school lunches, go-to dinner recipes, go-to outfits, right? Like I have this summer outfit that I am loving. That's just my go-to. When I don't have the energy and I know I'm going on date night, I can always throw on this one pair of shoes and blouse and jeans that I love with my cute crossbody and I'm psyched. Okay, so in the kitchen, I think having back pocket recipes is really key. And then of course, there's always an opportunity to get creative when you have the energy, when you have the time, maybe when you just feel like experimenting. I have this stool under my legs that I'm just gonna move because I realized I was not comfortable. Back pocket recipes are the recipes that you rely on, you go to over and over again. And here's the criteria for my back pocket recipes, okay? They have to be easy. They have to be good, okay? So, you know, like back pocket pancakes may not be like the best blow your mind pancakes, because honestly, the best blow your mind pancakes require you to whisk egg whites and to like do all this fussy stuff. But it's easy and it's good. It's like top notch with a simple recipe. And it's also really adaptable, meaning that you can do, you know, you can take that recipe, that base recipe, and make it a million different ways. And as you get comfortable with your cooking, you can riff off of it. Okay, so that's what a back pocket recipe is. And I'm gonna be traveling a whole bunch this summer, so it probably we won't have this Kitchen Help Live super consistent over the next couple of weeks. But come mid-September, we're gonna be doing back to school like crazy, and we're gonna also be doing back to school dinners. We're gonna be really featuring back pocket recipes because that's what you need when you're super busy, like back to school time. But today I wanted to kick it off with a a back pocket recipe that is one of my favorites. It is a basic 1 bowl muffin batter that I love because it comes out fluffy. It is super easy. In fact, you can kind of memorize it after a couple of times because all the measurements are just really even. And you can adapt it a million ways. And why muffins? Well, here's the deal with muffins, is that I feel like they're great for playdates, they're great for sleepovers, they're great for classroom parties, they're great for barbecues, they're great for potlucks. Bake sales, like you need a great muffin recipe, and you need one, like you don't want to be constantly researching, like, oh, now I want a low sugar muffin for breakfast, and now I want a like super sweet muffin for the, you know, for the birthday party. You want just one great muffin recipe that's the base, where you can adjust the sugar up or down and you can adjust the toppings like crazy. And that's what this recipe is. I mentioned my cookbook earlier, Make It Easy, because it's an adaptation from the recipe in my cookbook, Make It Easy, which you can find at any bookstore. Cool Mom Eats fans, if you go to the site, on the right-hand column, there's a badge for it. You can pick it up from our Amazon affiliate right there. Click and you go right to it, if that's easier for you. But let me just cook it for you guys today. So I actually baked a batch earlier because it's so easy. I can do 2 batches in one day. And what I put in the earlier ones was a little less sugar than I'm going to talk about now. I put in carrots because, I don't know, vegetables. And cinnamon chips because cinnamon chips and carrots go really nicely together. I adjusted the amount of cinnamon chips, and I'll talk to you about why and how I did that when we get to cooking. And what else did I do? I think that was it. And that, my intention there was to make more of a breakfast muffin, okay? Now I'm gonna make a banana peanut butter chip chocolate chip muffin, because peanut butter and banana and chocolate is heavenly, okay? So I'm gonna make more of a dessert muffin today. And that's the thing, the recipe is pretty much the same. You just make these tiny adjustments and you get these 2 different, these 2 different muffins. The other thing about these muffins is that they freeze beautifully. So you can make them, you can cool them, you can pop them in the freezer. So let's get to cooking. Huh? How about we do that? In the meantime, we have the whole, on Facebook, we have the Cool Mom Picks and Cool Mom Eats team there. They are fielding questions. If I don't catch something because I'm cooking, ask your question, make your comment, tell us where you're from. We want to hear from you. See, we're already seeing comments coming in. Hi, Vivian. And also, tell us where you're from. And oh, also share this. Share this while we're going live. Share this right now. People are on lunch break. They want to know what's going on. And this is like, every parent should have this recipe in their where? In their back pocket. So you should be sharing this like crazy. And if you're watching this afterwards, you can still share, even if we're not live. All right, so let's get to cooking. Let's scroll down here. I can even put the recipe aside because I don't need it. All right, let's adjust here a little bit. All right, now I'm gonna try to, hi YouTubers. Look, this is an experiment, so let's see, can we get you guys to see what I'm cooking? Of course, my tripod's giving me all kinds of problems. I don't know, guys. We're having some technical difficulties here. All right, guys, technical difficulties. First time going live on YouTube. I'm gonna finish up and I'm gonna put this up later for you guys to see so I don't hold you up. Cool? Bye. All right, hello Facebookers, I am back. All right, let's make this muffin recipe. So, of course, the first thing you need for muffins is flour. Actually, come back to me because I want to talk to you a little bit about flour. Okay, so one of the reasons why I love this recipe as your go-to muffin recipe is because I use part all-purpose flour and part whole wheat pastry flour. Okay, why do I do that? So whole wheat pastry flour has more whole grains than refined all-purpose flour. Now, why don't I use regular whole wheat flour? Because it's not a one-to-one substitute for all-purpose, and it can get really tricky. If you want a light, fluffy muffin and you just, do half all-purpose and half whole wheat, you're gonna end up with a really dense muffin that isn't great. So whole wheat pastry flour solves that problem. It's a little bit of a compromise on the whole grains, but it's still better than all-purpose, and it bakes up beautifully. So I have Bob's Red Mill. This is not sponsored. This is just what I have in my pantry. But you want to look for whole wheat pastry flour, okay? So we're going to do half whole wheat pastry flour and we're going to do half all-purpose flour, all right? So I have the all-purpose flour here already. And now let's talk about measuring flour, because that is another issue, okay? So most people go in with the scoop and they, they just whoosh. And then you end up with a densely packed cup of flour, okay? And your measurement is gonna be off. If the recipe calls for sifting, hi, let's go back to my face since I'm talking more. That's what I like to do, I like to talk. Okay, so if the recipe calls for sifting, you don't have to worry about it because you're gonna measure after you sift. You can scoop, you can sift, and then from the sifted flour, you're gonna measure 1 cup. But guess what? Sifting's a pain in the butt. That's what I say. Who needs that extra step? I mean, we're already doing this in 1 bowl. We're busy parents. We need this to be as quick as possible. So instead of scooping, I'm gonna teach you how to measure flour so that you get the right measurement. You don't get too much because too much flour means too much gluten, means a dense texture, okay? So let's scooch down again. What you wanna do is you wanna either pour it in like this, if you have, you know, if that's easy for you depending on where your flour is, or you want to, this is how I usually keep my flour, you want to spoon it in, and that kind of aerates the flour as you are going. All right, so here you just spoon it in, and see you're not getting it nice and fluffy. The air is getting in there versus when you scoop out like that, it just gets packed. Okay, so you want to measure, and you don't want to flatten it too much. You don't want to flatten it with your hand or with the back of the spoon because then you're densely packing it again. So you measure it like this, you kind of pile it up. Then you want to take a straight edge, okay? I use the back of my spoon, can you guys see this? And you just kind of tap along the top, and that's getting the excess flour and any gaps so that your full cup measurement is really full. And then you want to go, whoosh. I don't want to do it over my counter, it's going to make it so messy. There you go. You level it just like that. Ba-ba! Okay. So now 1 cup of regular flour, all purpose, 1 cup of whole wheat pastry flour, not regular. Okay, now we want to do baking powder. This recipe calls just for baking powder. And I love round numbers when I'm cooking. Where did my measuring things go? I love round numbers. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And I just, you know, scoop it up, and then I use the edge of my packaging to just scrape it up, okay? Then we want to do 1 teaspoon salt. See, 1, 1, 1, 1, I love it. So this is a ½ teaspoon measure, I'm gonna do it twice. And then we want to do a ½ cup of sugar. Now, let's talk about sugar, okay? Okay, so before I talk about sugar, Vivian, whenever I make muffins with wheat flour, they seem to go sour after a day or two, really weird taste. So that's really interesting, Vivian. Okay, there are a couple of things about that. One is, are you using whole grain flour? It is much more sensitive. Whole wheat pastry flour is a little bit more refined, which is why you can use it as a 1-to-1 with all purpose. But again, it has more benefits than all purpose, so I still like using it, even though it's a little bit of a compromise from whole wheat flour. Also, you want to make sure that your flour is good to begin with. And this is especially true with whole grain flours like whole wheat pastry, you know, buckwheat. I actually keep a lot of those flours in my freezer to keep them fresh. So that's another thing that you can consider. Okay, so let's talk about sugar. Oh my gosh, that light is so bright. I feel like I say that every week and I keep turning it down and I thought I was gonna have to start over. Technical difficulties, yay, hard thumbs, awesome. Okay, phew. All right, if you are just tuning in, I am Stacy from Cool Mom Eats. We are making a 1 bowl all-purpose muffin batter that I will be posting on Cool Mom Eats, but here, follow along so you know how easy it is. Okay, we were talking about sugar, we're using granulated sugar. Now, I don't love super sweet things, and neither do my kids. I mean, like, of course they do, but they have, you know, their palates have developed with my cooking, and I don't use tons of sugar. So this recipe calls for a ½ cup of sugar. I think it's a really happy compromise. It's what I used in my cookbook, and my cookbook was really for everybody. It wasn't catered to like a super healthy crowd. It's really a cookbook about moderation, being able to use supermarket shortcuts, and I really felt like this was a good middle ground. If you wanted to turn this batter into more of a cupcake or a really sweet muffin as a treat, as a dessert, as a, you know, classroom birthday thing, you could definitely add more and these won't be too crazy. If you want to make them a breakfast muffin, I don't know, you know, I think that the half cup spread across 12 muffins is fine in the morning, but if you're like really gung-ho about super low sugar, you can reduce it. It also depends on what toppings you put in there. So with the other cupcakes, I put in muffins, not cupcakes. The batch that I'm going to show you that I finished this morning, I used carrots and cinnamon chips. And cinnamon chips are really, really sweet and have a lot of sugar in them, so I reduced the sugar in this recipe, okay? But if they were just like carrots and regular ground cinnamon and just spices, I would have kept the half cup, even for a breakfast muffin. So that's my spiel on sugar. So, okay, so far in the dry ingredients, we have 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of whole wheat pastry flour, 1 tablespoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, and now we're putting in the half cup of sugar, okay? So we want to just whisk this all together. I am going to quickly melt butter because you need butter. And while we're talking about butter, I want to talk about how you can adapt a recipe, a baking recipe, to be 1 bowl. Because this is another thing, right? Sorry, I'm getting the butter ready here. Okay, this is the other thing about having a back pocket recipe and making it as easy as possible without compromising taste, and in the case of baked goods, without compromising your texture, because that's a huge part of it. So, hello, let's come back. Let's put this in the microwave. We want the butter to melt and cool. You guys, it is really hot in my kitchen. It's so hot in New York City today. It's just like so crazy humid. And I turned off my air conditioning because I want you guys to hear me. And now I'm like, woo! Okay, so 1 bowl baking is one of my favorites. I think that we have 1, maybe even 2 posts on Cool Mom Eats with 1 bowl baking recipes. I just think it's the best. It just makes things so much simpler. You're much more likely to bake if you can just dirty 1 bowl. Am I right? So here's the thing. If you're making something fussy, if you're making a special occasion cake where texture is really important, like super, super important, you don't want to mess with the recipe. If you are making something where you have to cream the butter or do something with the wet ingredients and the dry, you don't want to mess with the recipe. Use 2 bowls. It's only a second bowl. But when you have a recipe like this that is A, really simple, B, for something every day, and C, where all the liquid ingredients really are liquid, so we're not creaming the butter, right? In this case, we are melting and cooling the butter. Then, you know, we're mixing it with milk, we're mixing it with egg, it's all liquid. Then we can just mix those things together in the bowl with the dry ingredients, and I'm going to show you how. So brownies are another great example. I should have done this before because it really does need time to cool. Melted 4 tablespoons of butter. 4 tablespoons of butter is about half a stick. What was I saying, guys? I'm making sure that our butter is melted. Oh, so brownies, another great recipe that you can adapt for 1 bowl. Muffins for sure, pancakes, waffles, anything like that. Okay, so we're gonna let the butter cool just for 1 second. And I also wanna talk about salted butter and unsalted butter, because you see in a lot of baking recipes, it calls for unsalted butter and you're like, all I have is salted. Listen, we're all about making it easy. And if all you have is salted, just use salted. It's not that big a deal. If you are using salted butter and you're very sensitive to salt, either for health reasons or just your palate, then you probably want to reduce the amount of salt that the recipe calls for in the dry ingredients by a smidge. Not that much, but if it's like 1 teaspoon, I'd use half a teaspoon of salt. Because that's the thing about using unsalted butter. Unsalted butter allows you to completely control the amount of salt in your recipe by measuring it and putting it into the dry ingredients and not worrying about additional salt coming from the butter. So that's the deal with that, because we get that question a lot. All right, let's go back down to cooking. Okay, so you want your dry ingredients, excuse me, to be well mixed. And that's actually another thing. Hi, back to me. You don't want to do your wet ingredients and then add the dry when you're adapting a recipe to be a one bowl baking recipe, okay? Because the dry ingredients need to be well mixed. You don't want a clump of baking soda here that didn't get well incorporated, then the whole thing won't rise. So you always want to start by mixing together the dry ingredients, making sure they're mixed well, combined well, and then adding the wet. The wet is what can be added, and here's how. We're just gonna add a little well in the middle of our bowl. Okay, and we're gonna kind of use that space to mix the wet ingredients the way we might have in a separate bowl, but in one bowl because less cleaning, yay! Okay, so in this recipe, remember I talked about those even measurements? Love it. We're gonna have 1 egg, all right? 1 cup of milk, which I am getting out now, and then that 4 tablespoons of butter that we melted and cooled. Again, 4 tablespoons melted and cooled. It is unsalted ideally, but if you only have salted, just rewind a little bit and you can learn all about that. And it definitely has to be cool because when you take it right from the microwave or the stovetop and you mix it with the egg and the milk, this will harden or that will curdle. Either way, it's kind of gross. So, where's my measuring cup? I thought I had everything out today. Can you guys tell I'm in summer mode? Oh, here it is. I cleaned it from earlier. Okay, so let's start with the milk. 1 cup. You can use any milk you want. I tested this with whole and 2% cow's milk. I have no doubt that with a simple recipe like this, you can use a plant-based milk as well. Okay, so put milk in the center, right? Then 1 egg, right there. And actually, I'm going to, before I put in the butter, because I just want to give it maximum time to cool, I'm going to just kind of mix that egg and the milk together to make sure that egg gets really whisked before we mix it with the dry. And then I'm gonna pour in the butter. And I'm whisking all the while right now because this is still a teeny bit warm and I don't want it to coagulate. If you've really let this, really what you should do is the first thing you do when you get ready to make this recipe is melt the butter and let it sit while you measure and mix all the dry ingredients, and then it will be fine. But look, we're good to go here. And now that you have these wet ingredients mixed well, you just start folding it in. And it's kind of like you just poured it in and added it to the dry, which is what a 2-bowl ingredient would, a 2-bowl recipe rather, would call for. Okay, so somebody is asking, oh, it's Colleen is asking the best way to melt butter. Yeah, I find that in the microwave is just the easiest for me. But butter, chocolate in general, you can also use a double boiler. You can put butter directly on the heat in a little saucepan, but then you have to just watch it because butter will go from, hi, let's go back to me. Butter will go from melty to brown in an instant. Actually though, browned butter is one of the most delicious things on the planet, and it's brown butter in this recipe would be delicious. So feel free to do that. And what you do is the butter is going to melt, then it's going to foam. And as soon as it starts foaming, you want to keep an eye on it because then it's going to turn brown very quickly. And it's going to go from a very light brown to like a walnut brown to burnt really fast. And it's that walnut almond brown that you want. Almost any baking recipe, I swear, from cookies to brownies to muffins, is going to benefit from browned butter. But if you're not going to do brown butter, a double boiler is another thing that you can use. Although double boilers, too many dishes for this lady. So, not a fan. Although with chocolate, you really do have to use the double boiler because chocolate you don't want to put directly on the heat. But I melt my chocolate in the microwave too. I do. So it's just a matter of like making sure that you don't do too much at once. Same with butter. So with butter, I do like 20 seconds and then I pause the microwave. I kind of swirl it and sometimes there'll be a little bit of left, but if you swirl it, you're going to watch it melt. And then if it's not melted yet, after you've swirled it, put it in 5 to 10 second intervals. Same with chocolate. And in between each interval, you want to give it a little stir or a melt to make sure that it's not burning. Okay? So there you go. That's the skinny on melting butter, which is not skinny at all. And we already have our batter. So check it out, guys. This is the basic batter. This is the magic. This is what you can do a million things with. All right? So today I'm going to put, like I said, chocolate chips, peanut butter chips, and bananas because it's monkey food. I have monkeys, or at least my little one, and this is one of his favorites. He also loves in the summertime fresh strawberries, and white chocolate chips is a really wonderful version of this recipe. But like I said earlier, I did cinnamon chips and shredded carrot. Now, let's talk about the chips. This original recipe is a dessert, so I put in 1 full cup of chips, right? So I'm doing half peanut butter, and I'm doing half semi-sweet chocolate. And I have to open my package here. There we go. That's a lot of chips. Now, the cinnamon chips that I referenced earlier are super sweet, and on top of it, I wanted to use the muffins for breakfast. So I actually just put in half a cup of cinnamon chips, all right? Banana, I call for 1 banana in this recipe. Let's do a little switcheroo here because I want to show you what I do to make sure that the banana gets nice and combined. You want to peel the banana. Then we're going to cut it into pieces, and I'm going to use a fork to just mash the pieces a little bit, and that's going to help the banana really like melt into the batter. Now, if you're substituting other fruit, I would say start with 1 cup. With the shredded carrots, I did 1 cup, but I have a little caveat about that I'm going to share with you in a minute. So here's what I'm doing. Okay, I have a piece, and I kind of smash it with the fork a little bit so that it kind of gets chunky and melts into the batter, but not too, but we don't want a puree here. And actually that's a good segue to talking about substituting things like shredded carrots or shredded zucchini if you are shredding the vegetable yourself. Okay, if I press this anymore, it would get really mushy. Like if I made it a puree, I would be adding a lot of moisture to the batter, and that moisture would change the consistency of the batter, okay? So this was a nice compromise so that I get nice mushy pieces and I don't get big too like overly hunky pieces of banana in the batter, but it keeps from adding moisture, which is what happens if you puree it. Let's move this. Okay, check it out. Here's my batter. We're gonna mix it all up. Oh, these are the best. Smells good. Okay, I'm gonna get back to that moisture issue in a second. It's just while the camera is on the batter, I also wanna talk about chocolate chips. A lot of people, you may have seen shake chips in flour before they add them to a batter. That is not necessary here because this is a very nice and thick batter and they are gonna get suspended on their own. That's when you have a really thin batter that the chocolate chips are going to sink to the bottom. And shaking them with flour just allows them to get more suspended in the flour. I'm gonna wipe my hands. Now, okay. So that's the deal with chips, that's the deal with sugar, and those are the main adaptations for this basic recipe. The other adaptation is these mix-ins, right? When you're working with fresh food. Hi, Ashley. Oh, look, Ashley's here. Okay, so if you want to add zucchini, if you want to add carrots to make a breakfast version, to make just a healthier version, you're going to get a lot of moisture content, okay? So you want to grate the zucchini, grate the carrots, and then you need to really, really squeeze it dry because if you don't, when you add it to the batter, it's going to add water to the batter, which totally changes your consistency and waters it down, okay? So that's really important. But there's a little caveat to that. I'm not trying to make things tricky for you guys because you know that I'm all about keeping it super easy. But if you get the shredded carrots from the supermarket, actually I have them, so let me show you. They're already really, really dry. There's a peek into my refrigerator. Okay, these don't have a ton of moisture content. And it will vary a little bit. Like when you first open the package, they will. This package has been open for like 3 or 4 days. So these are really, really dry. You can see by look, it just like falls into my hand, and now a couple got in the batter. So I do 1 full cup of this, but if I had shredded the carrot myself with my microplane, I would have squeezed it really dry, which then makes it more compact, and then I would just measure a 1/2 cup instead of a full cup. Okay, but again, you can play with this recipe. That's the beauty of it. It is super easy. So once you have your batter, like we do here, now with a couple of stray carrots, which you know I don't mind, get those babies to eat vegetables any way that you can. You just want to line. I like to line them even when I'm keeping them for home and not bringing them to a bake sale or a classroom, because I can store them in the freezer that way. It's really, really easy. They're already wrapped, and then when I defrost them, the kids can just grab them and go. And this batter makes about 1 dozen muffins. So all you want to do here is just divide evenly. When I'm using these paper liners, I like to just go a first round, because then it anchors the paper, because the paper gets all like puffy and in the way. And then I'll go back and kind of even them all out. I'm sorry. I've been resisting licking the batter, but I just had to. So that's the deal with that. And then here is how the muffins come out. These are from this morning. So these are, the light is so weird today, so I'm gonna just do this. These are the carrot cinnamon chip muffins, okay? And I just wanna show you the inside, because I just really love the texture of these, right? For everyday muffins. See, so they're really fluffy, but they're also kind of firm and hearty, which I love, especially in a breakfast muffin. And they're yummy. I already had one, so I'm only gonna take 1 bite. So good. You know, I have mixed feelings about cinnamon chips. We should talk about that sometime. I don't know, I wanna hear from you guys. Have you ever used cinnamon chips? They are so, so sweet. Oh, the other thing that I added to these that I didn't talk about in today's banana peanut butter chocolate chip muffins is spices. Adding cinnamon and cardamom. I put a 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom in these. If I were using cinnamon instead of these cinnamon chips, I would have added 1 teaspoon. So good. So easy. So guys, that's it. This is your back pocket muffin recipe. You can adapt it a million ways. We are going to be posting the recipe on Cool Mom Eats later today or tomorrow. We will include the link below so that you can reference it anytime you want. It's also adapted from my cookbook, Make It Easy, and I think their link for getting it is already there to our Amazon affiliate. And that's, oh, we have a late breaking question coming in that's really, really important. Hi, Vivian. You asked about storing the muffins. That's great. So first of all, I did a ton of research on storing baked goods because that's always a huge question. We'll include the link below. On Cool Mom Eats, there's a post on how to store baked goods. And it's comprehensive. It talks about baked goods with icing, baked goods not with icing, baked goods like cakes that you've already cut into versus a finished cake that you've made in advance that isn't cut. So go there for all the details. But these muffins in particular, I would keep them on the counter for the first day. Then I would pop them in the fridge for the first 3 days after that. After that, you want to put them in the freezer. Or if you know that you're not going to eat them within 3 days, 3-4 days, you want to pop them into the freezer. I like these warm. That's why I put them in the fridge so quickly, because I'm going to warm them up anyway. And the way that I do that is just in my microwave. Again, you can also cut them in half, pop them in the toaster for a minute, or pop them in the oven, but I feel like that takes a lot of time and energy, just heating up your whole oven for that. When you're taking them out of the freezer, what I like to do is, if you remember, and I understand if you don't, you take them out of the freezer the night before, you put them in the fridge, and they defrost in the fridge overnight, and then I pop them in the microwave for just a few seconds, just to get them warmed through. But if you're taking them directly out of the freezer, you can still just pop them from the freezer straight into the microwave, and it is safe with these paper liners. And then you just want to do it longer, but I would start with like 10 to 15 seconds. That definitely won't be enough, but then do intervals from there. And just be mindful, especially if you're feeding little ones. They get really hot on the inside. They may be way hotter on the inside than they are on the outside. So when you take the muffin out of the microwave, even when I'm feeding my 10-year-old, I always cut it in half, let it steam, touch it before I serve it to him, because you can really get burned. So there you have it, guys. I am Stacy from Cool Mom Eats. Be sure to check for all the links that I talked about below. You'll get everything you need there, and also leave comments. Tell us what you want to hear on the next Kitchen Help Live. We always want to hear from you and make sure we're answering your questions and solving your problems. You can visit us at coolmomeats.com. We are also, all of our content is shared here on Facebook on the Cool Mom Pics page, and on Twitter and Pinterest and Instagram, we are at Cool Mom Eats. And also, our newsletter is fantastic, and I'll tell you the main reason why. We plan your meals for you. Every Saturday morning, a meal plan goes out, and we send out some other tidbits that you don't want to miss. So be sure to subscribe to that as well at coolmomeats.com. It's right on top. Subscribe. Do it. It is great to see you guys. I am going to be here next week at a different time because I'm leaving for a trip to Spain. Woo! Next Thursday. So Kitchen Help Live will be next week on Wednesday at 12 noon, and we'll remind you here on Facebook then. All right, guys, have a great day and get baking. It's easy.